June clutched his small travel bag as he walked through the gleaming corridors of the Galaxy Prime. The massive starship stretched for miles, its crystal walls showing the swirling colors of hyperspace outside. This was the most expensive passenger liner in the galaxy, carrying the richest beings from 1,000 different worlds. His simple black jacket and worn boots looked out of place among the glittering robes and exotic jewelry of the other passengers. A group of tall, golden-skinned Arcturians whispered and pointed at him as he passed. Their translator devices buzzed with cruel laughter. "Look at that human," one said loudly, still wearing primitive fabric clothing. June kept walking, his face calm. He had learned long ago not to react to such comments. Humans were still considered the newest species in galactic society, barely 200 years. Since first contact, most aliens saw them as backwards creatures who had only recently discovered space travel. The main reception area rose 30 stories high, filled with floating platforms where wealthy passengers sipped exotic drinks served by robotic attendants. Crystalline beings from the Vegas system floated near the ceiling, their bodies pulsing with soft light below them. The slug-like cut merchants from the outer rim argued loudly over some business deal. June approached the check-in counter where a tall, blue-skinned Rigelian female stood behind a holographic display. Her name tag read Velta, senior flight attendant. She had the typical Rigelian features: elongated skull, large black eyes, and skin that shimmered like water. Silver tattoos covered her arms, marking her high status in Rigelian society. Velta was busy talking to a wealthy Centaurian couple, her voice sweet and respectful as she upgraded their suite to the premium level. The male Centaurian, covered in beautiful scales that changed color, handed her a large tip. She bowed gracefully. When June stepped forward, her entire demeanor changed. Her large eyes narrowed with disgust as she looked him up and down like he was something unpleasant she had stepped in. "What do you want?" she snapped, not bothering to look at his face. "Hello, I need to check in from my flight," June said politely, pulling out his ticket pad. "My name is Park June." Velta rolled her eyes and turned to her colleague working nearby, a shorter Rigelian male with similar tattoos, Chiron. "Look at this. Another human pest thinks he can afford to travel with civilized beings." Chiron chuckled, his voice making a sound like water bubbling. "I thought they were limiting how many humans could board. The smell alone ruins the atmosphere for our real customers." Several alien passengers nearby stopped their conversations to watch the scene. A family of insect-like mantids clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their species. Even the mechanical service droids seemed to pause in their duties. June remained calm, extending his ticket pad toward Velta. "I have a confirmed reservation. First class, cabin 2847. Velta snatched the device from his hands so roughly that it nearly fell to the floor. She glanced at the screen. Then her expression became even more hostile. "This must be some mistake," she said loudly, making sure everyone round could hear. "Humans don't travel first class. You people can barely afford the cargo section." She tossed the ticket pad back at him carelessly. June caught it before it hit the ground, still maintaining his polite composure. "The reservation is confirmed," he said quietly. "Perhaps you could check your system again." This seemed to make Velta even angrier. Her skin darkened to a deeper blue, which June knew meant rage in Rigelian body language. "Are you telling me how to do my job, human?" she hissed, leaning forward over the counter. "Your primitive species should be grateful we even allow you on our ships." The crowd of alien passengers grew larger. Sensing drama, Some pulled out recording devices, eager to capture what they expected would be an amusing humiliation of the human passenger. Cargo section, Velta declared, pressing buttons on her holographic display. Level 15. Next to the waste recycling units. That's where your kind belongs. June tried one more time. His voice still respectful but firm. Ma'am, I have a valid first-class ticket. I've paid the full fare. That was apparently the last straw for Velta. Her face twisted with fury as she reached across the counter. The sharp crack of her palm hitting June's cheek echoed through the reception area, causing several smaller aliens to jump back in surprise. Know your place, primitive, she shouted, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Humans are the lowest species in this galaxy. You're lucky we don't make you travel outside the ship tied to the hull. June's cheek burned from the slap, but he didn't raise his hand to touch it. He simply looked at Velta with those quiet, dark eyes that gave nothing away. The alien passengers erupted in cruel laughter and applause. The manted family clicked excitedly, while the hut merchants made their species equivalent of cheering sounds. Someone shouted, "Put the human in his place." Captain Zordon, a massive reptilian being from the warlike Draconian Empire, had been watching from the upper level. He descended on a floating platform, his scales gleaming under the ship's lights and his eyes glowing red with amusement. June approached him respectfully. "Captain, I'd like to file a formal complaint about the treatment I've received." Zordon looked down at the human with obvious contempt, then waved one clawed hand dismissively. "Complaint denied. My crew maintains proper order aboard this vessel. Species hierarchy must be respected." The crowd cheered again as June was escorted away toward the low levels, his quiet dignity intact despite the humiliation. The cargo hold where June was forced to stay smelled like recycled iron. Dust-dryer lubricants. His bed was nothing more than a thin mat between two massive shipping containers. The constant hum of the ship's engines made sleep nearly impossible, while exotic cargo from dozens of worlds created strange shadows in the dim lighting. Every morning, June made his way to the dining areas, hoping for a decent meal, but Velta seemed to take personal pleasure in making his life miserable. She would appear wherever he went, her blue skin practically glowing with satisfaction as she tormented him. "Oh look, the pet human wants food," she would announce loudly to the other passengers. Then she would accidentally bump into him, spilling whatever drink she was carrying all over his clothes. The sticky, purple Rigelian wine left permanent stains on his simple jacket. When meal time came, Velta made sure June got only the leftover scraps that other passengers had rejected, while wealthy aliens feasted on rare delicacies from across the galaxy. Floating jellyfish from the Cloud Nebula, crystallized fruits that sang when you bit them, and meat from creatures that lived in the cores of gas giants. June received stale protein bars and recycled water. The other passengers found this treatment hilarious. The Golden Arcturians would record videos of June's humiliation to share with their friends back home. The insect-like mantids would click their mandibles excitedly whenever Velta appeared to torment him. Even the normally peaceful tree people from the forest world seemed to enjoy watching a human being put in his place. But June endured it all with quiet dignity. He never complained, never fought back, never even raised his voice. He would simply clean the spilled drinks from his clothes and continue on his way. This calm response seemed to make Velta even angrier, as if she wanted him to break down and beg for mercy. On the second day of their journey, June discovered something interesting while exploring the ship's low levels, hidden behind maintenance panels. He found access ports to the ship's main computer systems. His trained eye recognized technology that looked familiar, quantum processors that resembled designs he had seen before. but with alien modifications that made them less efficient. He also noticed that the ship's defensive systems were outdated by at least 20 years. The shield generators were running on old harmonic frequencies that any decent pirate crew could easily bypass. The weapon targeting systems relied on predictive algorithms that had known weaknesses for a ship. Carrying the galaxy's wealthiest passengers, the Galaxy Prime had surprisingly poor security. On the third day, everything changed. June was in the observation deck, one of the few areas where he was allowed. Watching the stars streak past in hyperspace, the view was beautiful, streams of light in every color imaginable, like being inside a cosmic rainbow. Other passengers floated nearby in anti-gravity chairs, sipping expensive drinks and discussing business deals worth more money than most planets produced in a year. Suddenly, the ship's emergency alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors as the computer's voice announced in a dozen different languages, "Emergency situation detected. All passengers report to designated safety zones immediately." Through the massive viewing windows, June could see what was happening. A smaller cargo freighter had dropped out of hyperspace nearby, clearly in distress. Its hull was damaged, with atmosphere leaking out invisible streams of frozen gas. But surrounding the freighter were 5 sleek, black ships that could only be pirates. The pirate vessels looked like mechanical sharks, their hulls covered in weapons and their engines glowing an ominous red. They were firing concentrated energy beams at the freighter's engines, trying to disable it completely so they could board and steal its cargo. Captain Zordan's voice boomed through the ship's communication system. "This is the Galaxy Prime. We are maintaining safe distance from the combat zone. All passengers remain calm while we monitor the situation." June watched as the freighter's shields began to fail under the constant bombardment. He could see the patterns in the pirates' attack. They were using a coordinated assault that exploited weaknesses in standard shield configurations. The freighter was trying to defend itself, but its crew clearly didn't understand how to modify their defensive frequencies to counter the attack, unable to just stand by and watch. June made his way toward the bridge. Security droids tried to stop him, their mechanical voices stating that the bridge was off-limits to passengers. But June knew emergency protocols during a crisis. Any passenger with relevant expertise could offer assistance. The bridge of the Galaxy Prime was impressive, with holographic displays showing tactical information from every angle. Captain Zordan stood in the center, his reptilian eyes glowing as he watched the battle. His crew of mixed alien species worked frantically at their stations, monitoring the situation. "Captain," June said respectfully, approaching the command platform, "I believe I can help save that freighter." Several crew members turned to stare at him in disbelief. Velta, who happened to be on the bridge delivering refreshments to the officers, nearly dropped her tray when she saw him. "The freighter's shield harmonics are set to standard defensive frequencies," June continued, his voice calm and professional, "but those pirates are using quantum resonance weapons. If the freighter crew adjusts their shields to rotating frequencies and inverts their polarity every 2.3 seconds, they can create interference patterns that will make the pirate weapons ineffective." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of weapons fire from the battle outside. Velta was the first to break the silence, her voice rising to a shriek that made everyone wince. "Silence. Human. How dare you come to the bridge during a crisis?" She pushed past the other crew members, her face dark blue with rage. "Your species barely discovered fire a few centuries ago. You know nothing about space combat or shield technology. The pattern suggests they could also reroute power from non-essential systems to boost their engines," June added quietly, ignoring Velta's outburst. If they increase their acceleration by just 15%, they can break free of the pirates' formation. Captain Zordan's laugh was like the sound of rocks grinding together. The human thinks he understands warfare better than a draconian military officer. How amusing. Outside the viewing windows, the freighter's hull began to crack under the sustained assault. Atmosphere continued to stream out, and June could see that the ship wouldn't last much longer. The pirates were moving in for the final attack, their weapons charging for what would clearly be the killing blow. Then it happened. The freighter's shields failed completely, and the pirates' weapons tore through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. Explosions zoomed across the vessel's surface as its power core overloaded. Within seconds, the freighter was nothing but expanding debris and frozen gases. The bridge crew watched in silence as the pirate ships collected whatever valuable cargo they could find from the wreckage. He then disappeared back into hyperspace, leaving no survivors. June said nothing, but his hands clenched slightly at his sides, the only sign of his frustration at being unable to help later. When rescue ships arrived to search for survivors, the few crew members found floating in escape pods whispered among themselves. They had heard the human suggestions over the emergency communication channels, and they knew that his ideas could have saved their ship and their friends. But it was too late now. Another ship had been lost because pride and prejudice had prevented good advice from being heard. The fourth day of their journey began like any other, with June quietly eating his breakfast of stale protein bars in the cargo hold. But outside the ship's protective hull, something deadly was building in the depths of space. The Kepler 442 star system was known for its unstable sun, a massive red giant that occasionally erupted with solar flares powerful enough to fry electronic systems across multiple star systems. Today, that sun was angrier than it had been in over a century. At first, the passengers of the Galaxy Prime noticed nothing unusual. The wealthy aliens continued their parties in the luxury suites, while robotic servants glided through the corridors, serving exotic drinks and delicacies. The ship's artificial gravity kept everyone comfortable as they traveled through hyperspace at speeds that would have been impossible just a few generations ago. But deep in the ship's engine room, warning lights began flashing on computer screens. The chief engineer, a six-armed creature from the Rigel system, watched in growing alarm as sensor readings showed massive electromagnetic radiation approaching from behind them. "Captain's ordered to the bridge immediately," came the announcement over the ship's communication system. But by then, it was already too late. The solar storm hit the Galaxy Prime like an invisible fist. Electromagnetic radiation, traveling at the speed of light, crashed into the ship's shields with the force of 1,000,000 lightning bolts. The protective energy barriers that surrounded the vessel flickered and sparked. Overloaded by power beyond their design limits throughout the ship, lights went out, emergency power kicked in, bathing the corridors in an eerie red glow. Computer systems crashed and rebooted frantically, their circuits scrambled by the electromagnetic pulse. Most critically, the navigation computers that guided the ship through hyperspace began showing error messages in dozens of alien languages. Passengers screamed as the artificial gravity fluctuated, causing some to float helplessly while others were pressed against the walls by sudden increases in gravitational force. The elegant crystal beings from Vega began to crack under the stress, their bodies designed for the stable environment of their home world. Panic spread through the ship like wildfire. Captain Zordon rushed to the bridge, his reptilian claws clicking against the metal deck plating as he ran. What he saw there made his blood run cold. Every screen showed the same terrifying message: navigation systems offline, hyperspace containment failing, emergency drop to normal space required. "Drop us out of hyperspace now," he roared at his crew. The ship shuddered violently as it was pulled out of the higher dimensions where faster-than-light travel was possible. Stars that had been streaks of light suddenly became steady points in the darkness. But their new location was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Through the main viewing windows, a sight of absolute terror dominated the view, less than 1,000,000 kilometers away. A massive black hole spun silently in space. Its event, horizon, the point of no return, appeared as a perfect circle of absolute darkness, surrounded by a swirling disk of superheated matter that glowed brighter than any star. The gravitational pull of the black hole was already affecting the ship. Without working engines or navigation systems, the Galaxy Prime was slowly but steadily being pulled toward its doom. Computer calculation showed they had perhaps 6 hours before crossing the event horizon, after which not even light could escape. Passengers who had been laughing at June just days before now wept openly. The Manted family huddled together, their insect-like bodies trembling with fear. The golden Arcturians, who had seemed so proud and superior, now begged their gods for salvation. Even the mechanical service droids seemed to move more slowly, as if they too understood the gravity of their situation. Captain Zordon tried everything he could think of. He ordered his crew to restart the engines manually, but the electromagnetic pulse had fried too many crucial circuits. He attempted to send distress signals, but their communication systems were also damaged. Every backup system, every emergency protocol, every safety measure had failed. In the cargo hold, June sat quietly on his thin mat, listening to the sounds of panic echoing through the ship's corridors. He had known this might happen. The Kepler 442 system was notorious for its dangerous solar activity. Most experienced space travelers avoided it entirely. But the Galaxy Prime had taken this route to save time and fuel costs. As the situation grew more desperate, June made a decision. He reached into his simple travel bag and pulled out a device that looked like nothing more than a small, black rectangle to most observers. It would have appeared to be just another piece of primitive human technology, perhaps a music player or communication device. But this device was far more than it appeared to be. June walked calmly through the panicking crowds, ignoring the aliens who pushed past him in their terror. Some recognized him as the human who had been humiliated by Velta, but none paid him any attention now. They were too focused on their own fear to notice one quiet passenger making his way toward the bridge. The security systems that would normally have prevented him from accessing restricted areas were offline due to the electromagnet damage. June walked through corridors he had never seen before, past luxury suites worth more than most planets' annual budgets, until he reached the bridge. The scene there was chaos. Captain Zordon was roaring orders at his crew while they frantically tried to repair damaged systems. Sparks flew from overloaded control panels, and the smell of burnt electronics filled the air. Through the main viewing screen, the black hole loomed larger and more terrifying than before. June stepped into the center of the bridge and activated his device. Immediately, holographic displays materialized around him. Not the crude, flickering projections used by most alien technology, but crystal-clear three-dimensional images that showed system diagrams of incredible complexity. Computer, this is CEO Park Jun of Stellar Industries, he said in a calm, clear voice that somehow carried over all the noise and panic. Authorization code Alpha 77. Emergency override protocol is now active. The effect was immediate and stunning. Throughout the ship, systems that had been dead suddenly came back online. Lights flickered and then blazed steadily. The artificial gravity stabilized. Most importantly, deep in the engine room, massive fusion reactors that had been silent began to hum with power. Velta, who had been cowering behind a control panel, looked up at the sound of June's voice. When she saw him standing there with advanced holographic technology swirling round him, her large black eyes widened in absolute horror. Impossible, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the ship's systems coming back to life. You're just a human. You're primitive. You're nothing but a pest from a backward world. But the evidence was right there in front of her. The same ship that had been moments away from destruction was now responding to commands from her device that this supposedly primitive human carried in his pocket. Systems that she had thought were built by advanced alien civilizations were suddenly obeying a human voice. June's holographic display showed information that made Captain Zorn's reptilian jaw drop open in shock. Stellar Industries, a name that appeared on the manufacturing plates of nearly every piece of advanced technology in the galaxy. The company that built the engines, the shields, the life support systems, the navigation computers for 80% of all starships currently in service, and this quiet human, who had been forced to sleep in the cargo hold and eat scraps like some kind of animal, was claiming to be its CEO. This cannot be real. Velda said, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. Humans are the newest species in the galaxy. You've only had space travel for 200 years. Stellar Industries has been around for 5 centuries. June looked at her with those same calm, dark eyes that had shown no anger even when she had slapped him. Stellar Industries has been human-owned since its founding, he said simply. We've been quietly improving galactic technology for generations while allowing other species to take the credit. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of restored power systems. Every alien present stared at June as if seeing him for the first time, realizing that everything they thought they knew about humans was completely wrong. June's small device projected holographic displays that filled the entire bridge with swirling patterns of light and data. His fingers moved through the three-dimensional controls with practiced ease, touching points of light that commanded systems throughout the massive starship. Each gesture sent new instructions flowing through hidden networks that had been built into the ship's very foundation. The aliens on the bridge watched in stunned silence as technology they thought they understood began revealing its true nature. What they had believed were Rigelian engine designs suddenly displayed human patent numbers. Control systems supposedly invented by the advanced Centaurian Empire now showed manufacturing codes from Earth-based facilities deep in the engine room. Fusion reactors that had been silent and cold suddenly blazed with renewed power. But they weren't just returning to normal operation. They were exceeding every performance rating that alien engineers had ever recorded. The massive engines, each one the size of a city building, began producing energy levels that should have been impossible according to galactic physics textbooks. Engine output now at 150% of rated capacity, reported the ship's computer in its comm. Electronic voice. Throughout the corridors, passengers felt the deck plates vibrate with raw power as systems came online that most of them had never known existed. Captain Zordon stared at his instrument panels in disbelief. This is impossible. These engines were built by Rigelian Naval Industries. They have safety limits that cannot be exceeded. June glanced at him while continuing to work with the holographic controls. Rigelian Naval Industries is a subsidiary company. They assemble components designed and manufactured by human engineers on Earth. The safety limits were programmed to prevent alien crews from accessing the full potential of our technology. As if to prove his point, June touched another series of controls throughout the ship. Defensive shield generators that had been damaged by the solar storm didn't just repair themselves, they evolved. The familiar blue glow of standard energy shields flickered and changed, becoming a brilliant silver that pulsed with patterns no alien had ever seen before. Shield strength now at 300% of previous maximum. The computer announced the ship's protective barriers, which had been on the verge of complete failure just minutes ago, were now stronger than the armor on most military battleships. Velta, who had spent days humiliating June and treating him like dirt, found herself unable to look away from the incredible display of technology. Her hands trembled as she watched systems respond to the quiet human's commands in ways that defied everything she had been taught about galactic engineering. "How is this possible?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We studied your species. When you first achieved space flight, you were primitive. Your technology was centuries behind us." June's fingers paused in their work, and he looked directly at her. "That's what we wanted you to think. Humans learned very quickly that in a galaxy full of proud, advanced civilizations, it was safer to appear weak than to threaten anyone's sense of superiority. The navigation systems came online next, but these weren't the standard star charts that most spacefaring species relied upon. Instead, the main display showed hyperspace routes that seemed to bend and twist through dimensions that alien mathematics said couldn't exist. Pathways through spacetime appeared on the screen, marked with notations in human languages that most aliens couldn't even pronounce. Earth's hyperspace mapping project has been active for over a century, June explained as his hands continued to dance through the holographic interface. While other species were content to use the established trade routes, human explorers were quietly discovering faster, safer paths through dimensions that most civilizations don't even know exist. The six-armed chief engineer from Rigel stumbled onto the bridge, his multiple eyes wide with confusion and terror. "Sir," he gasped, speaking to Captain Zordon, "the engine room is full of technology I've never seen before. Control panels are appearing out of nowhere, showing systems that aren't supposed to exist on this ship." "They've always existed," June said calmly. "Human fail-safe systems built into every piece of equipment we've ever sold or licensed to other species. We learned from Earth's history that it's wise to maintain some control over the weapons and tools you give to others." Throughout the ship, other changes were becoming apparent. Robotic service units that had been simple cleaning and maintenance devices suddenly revealed hidden capabilities. Their mechanical arms extended into specialized tools that could perform complex engineering tasks. Their computer brains, which had seemed barely capable of following basic instructions, began displaying problem-solving abilities that rivaled the ship's main artificial intelligence systems. The wealthy alien passengers, who had been panicking about their approaching doom, now watched through viewing windows as their ship performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. The Galaxy Prime didn't just move away from the black hole. It danced around it, using the massive object's gravitational field like a slingshot to gain speed while maintaining perfect stability. "Gravitational trajectory locked," the computer announced, using black hole's rotational energy to achieve 100% normal hyperspace velocity. Estimated travel time to Centauri station reduced from 18 hours to 4.5 hours. On the main viewing screen, alien passengers could see something that took their breath away. The ship wasn't just escaping from the black hole. It was using the cosmic monster as a source of power. Drawing energy from its spinning mass through methods that no alien physicist had ever imagined possible. Velta watched all of this happening and felt her entire worldview crumbling around her. Everything she had believed about humans, about galactic civilization, about her own species' superiority, was proving to be built on lies and ignorance, unable to maintain her pride any longer. She fell to her knees on the bridge deck. Her blue skin had turned pale with shock, and her large black eyes were filled with tears of shame and terror. "Please," she whispered, looking up at June with desperate pleading in her voice. "Please forgive me. I didn't know. I didn't understand. I treated you terribly because I thought you were inferior." But I was wrong about everything. Other aliens on the bridge were having similar reactions. The golden Arcturians who had laughed at June's simple clothes now realized they had been mocking one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The insect-like mantids clicked their mandibles nervously, understanding that their crude jokes had been directed at someone who could shut down their entire civilization's technology with a thought. Captain Zordon, whose military pride had prevented him from listening to June's advice about the freighter attack, now saw the terrible cost of his arrogance. "How many ships have been lost because we refused to listen to human knowledge?" he asked, his voice heavy with regret. "Too many," June replied simply. His attention still focused on the holographic controls, but that's going to change now, as the ship's enhanced engines powered up for the jump back into hyperspace. June made one final adjustment to his control systems throughout the galaxy, on dozens of ships and space stations. Hidden human technology began transmitting a signal. It was a message that would reach every major news network, every government, and every alien who had ever dismissed humans as primitive newcomers to galactic society. The message was simple but revolutionary. Humanity has been the secret foundation of galactic civilization for over 2 centuries. It is time for that secret to end. As the Galaxy Prime leaped back into hyperspace, now traveling faster and more safely than any ship in galactic history, the universe was about to learn that the quiet, humble humans they had ignored and dismissed were actually the architects of everything they considered advanced and civilized. The tables had turned completely, and there would be no going back to the old way of thinking ever again. The news spread faster than hyperspace itself. Within minutes of the Galaxy Prime's dramatic escape from the black hole, automated systems on ships throughout the galaxy began receiving emergency broadcasts. The signal that June had activated contained not just his message, but proof, technical specifications, patent records, and manufacturing codes that reveal the truth about galactic technology. On the industrial world of Vega Prime, Rigelian, engineers stared at their computer screens in disbelief as they realized their most advanced starship engines were actually built from human designs. The fusion reactors they had proudly claimed as their own invention displayed hidden code signatures reading property of Stellar Industries, Earth Division, in the crystal cities of Arcturus. Golden-skinned scientists discovered that their precious anti-gravity technology, the foundation of their floating metropolises, was based on principles first developed in human research laboratories decades before their species had even learned to leave their home planet. The insect-like mantids, who had always boasted about their superior hive-mind computing systems, found documentation proving that their quantum processors were actually simplified versions of human neural network designs, deliberately scaled down to prevent them from accessing the full potential of the technology. News networks across the galaxy exploded with the revelation. The most watched program in galactic history became a documentary hastily assembled by Centaurian reporters, showing side-by-side comparisons of alien technology with original human patents that predated them by decades or even centuries. On the bridge of the Galaxy Prime, Captain Zordon received incoming messages from his superiors faster than he could read them. The Draconian Military Command, the Rigelian Trade Federation, and even the mysterious Elder Council of the Outer Rim were all demanding explanations for how a simple human passenger had accessed over eyed codes for their most secure systems, sir, his communications officer reported, her voice shaking with nervousness. "We're receiving priority messages from the Galactic Council. They're demanding an immediate report on everything that happened here, but the most dramatic reaction came from the passengers themselves. The wealthy aliens who had laughed at June's simple clothes and mocked his primitive human nature now found themselves in the uncomfortable position of realizing they had been insulting one of the most powerful beings in the known universe, the Manted family, who had clicked their mandibles in cruel amusement just days before, now huddled together in terror. Their species' entire economy was based on manufacturing contracts with companies that they now realized were secretly controlled by humans, if those contracts were cancelled. Their homeworld would face economic collapse within months. The Golden Arcturians, who had recorded videos of June's humiliation to share with their friends, were frantically trying to delete those recordings before anyone else could see them. They understood that being known as the beings who had mocked the CEO of Stellar Industries could destroy their reputations forever, but it was Velta who faced the most serious consequences. Word of her treatment of June spread throughout the galaxy's service industry networks within hours. Videos of her slapping him and forcing him to sleep in the cargo hold became the most watched content on every alien social media platform. Her supervisor, a high-ranking Rigelian official from the luxury cruise line, contacted her directly through a secure communication channel. His message was brief and devastating. Your actions have brought shame to our entire species. You are hereby terminated from employment and banned from working in the galactic transportation industry. Velta sat alone in her quarters, staring at the message with tears streaming down her blue cheeks. Her career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. But worse than that, she had to face the terrible realization that everything she had believed about herself and her place in the universe was completely wrong. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, was in emergency session. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered via holographic conference, their debates growing heated as they tried to understand how they had all been so thoroughly deceived about human capabilities. This changes everything, declared the Centaurian delegate, her scaled face showing deep concern. If humans have been secretly controlling our technology for centuries, what else have they been hiding from us? The question is not what they've been hiding, replied the ancient tree being who spoke for the forest worlds. The question is why we never bothered to look beyond our own prejudices to see the truth. After 6 hours of debate, the council reached a unanimous decision. Emergency legislation was passed, transmitted instantly to every government and organization in the galaxy. The new laws banned discrimination based on species, age of civilization, or technological development level. Any being caught treating another species as inferior would face severe legal and economic penalties. But the most significant change was in how the galaxy's citizens viewed humans. Social media platforms that had once been filled with jokes about primitive Earth dwellers now featured millions of posts from aliens apologizing for their past behavior and expressing no respect for human achievements. When the Galaxy Prime finally docked at Centauri Station, the scene was unlike anything in galactic history. The normally busy spaceport had been cleared of regular traffic, replaced by an assembly of the most important beings in the known universe. The platform where June would disembark was lined with delegates from the Galactic Council, military leaders from a dozen species, and representatives from every major corporation and trade federation. They had all come to personally apologize to the human they had so badly underestimated. As the airlock doors opened, June stepped out wearing the same simple black jacket and worn boots he had worn when he first boarded the ship. He looked exactly the same as before, quiet, humble, and unassuming. But now everyone who saw him understood that appearances could be deeply deceiving. The first to approach him was Ambassador Kreldos, the most senior diplomat in the Galactic Council, the ancient being whose species was old when most others were still primitive, bowed deeply before speaking. CEO Park Jun. he said in a voice that carried the weight of centuries on behalf of the Galactic Council and all member species. I offer our most sincere apologies for the treatment you received. We have been blind to the contributions of your people, and we are ashamed of our ignorance. Behind him, dozens of other dignitaries waited their turn to express similar sentiments. Military commanders who had dismissed human strategic advice, scientists who had ignored human research, and business leaders who had underestimated human innovation all stood ready to acknowledge their mistakes. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Velta appeared at the edge of the crowd. She had resigned from her position and spent her savings to travel to Centauri Station, hoping for a chance to apologize in person. When June saw her, he walked over to where she stood. Separated from the official delegation, she fell to her knees, again, just as she had on the bridge, tears streaming down her face. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I was cruel to you because I thought you were beneath me. But I was the one who was ignorant and small. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I understand how wrong I was." June reached down and gently helped her to her feet. "Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow." He said simply, "The fact that you're here, apologizing, shows that you're already becoming a better person." From that day forward, Velta dedicated her life to fighting discrimination throughout the galaxy. She became one of the most respected advocates for species equality, using her own shameful behavior as an example of how prejudice could blind anyone to the truth. Daughters for June. He smiled as he looked round at the gathering of alien dignitaries, all eager to show him the respect they should have offered from the beginning. Humanity had finally received the recognition they deserved, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the quiet brilliance and patient determination that had always been their greatest strengths. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again, and more importantly, it would never again assume that appearances told the whole story about anyone's true capabilities or worth. The end.